I welcome you all to the third lecture by Professor Rustichini on biological foundations of economics. So as we witnessed this morning, we attended two very truly outstanding lectures, and I personally was struck by the tools and research techniques you have brought to bear to make the research transdisciplinary. So in generally, one sees that when with this level of research tools and techniques used, the speaker tends to lose the audience. But we saw that most of us felt very engaged, and not only engaged, we had actually views, not only questions, but also views and on the material that you have presented. So it's really inspiring for all of us. What are the frontiers of research and economics? So with these words, I can't wait to hear you in your third lecture to amaze us with the same level of intensity that you have amazed us with your research this morning. So floor is yours. We have about 80 minutes of time.
Okay.
Please.
Okay, so thank you. So I would start, you remember, so the program is to take as-if models and replace them with mechanistic model. And then to replace the idea of the optimality of choice to replace it with the optimality of progress, of the process. So that's what I will try to do here in a specific example. And so it's going to be a challenge for you, and I'll try to do both. So here is the starting point. So this is a paper 2006. It's an old paper, but that's where we derive our data. Okay, so here is a challenge for you. I'll tell you how the situation was before a theorist came in and tried to understand what the data were saying. So what are the data? These are the subjects, capuchin monkeys, and this is the experiment. So we tell the monkey, takes 6 months to tell this to a monkey. You train the monkey. And you tell them, look, you have to look, you see this point? You have to keep your eye there until I tell you so. So the monkey has to fixate this point for half a second. Then, after a delay that is random between 1 and 2 seconds, these two things appear on the left and on the right of this fixation point. This is our way to tell to the monkey, here you have 4 milliliters, say, of peppermint, and here you have 1 milliliter of grape. The monkey likes grape more than peppermint. So for an equal quantity, it would go for the grape. Okay, that's what we know because we have studied the utility of the monkey. Then, at some random time, these 2 dots, you see these 2 dots, appear on the side of the fixation point, which becomes pale. And that's our way to tell to the monkey, now you can go. And the contract between us and the monkey is that it can fixate either this dot or this dot. So in this case, this this little circle, dotted circle, indicates that the monkey was, say, looking at the right option. So it was really telling us, I will choose the grape. And the monkey has to stare at this thing for 3/4 of a second. Okay? After 3/4 of a second, if the monkey does that, the monkey receives this 1 milliliter of grape. The monkey is thirsty, so it really wants this drink. Is the experiment clear? So we basically are able to tell the monkey after a long training this experiment. The monkey has to do that, has to follow these rules. First has to fixate this for half a second, then look at these 2 points that appear. So the monkey can consider these 2 options, okay, and decide what it likes. And then the way to communicate to us whether it wants peppermint or grape is by shifting the gaze to that point and keeping it there for 3/4 of a second. So the monkey cannot say grape. That's how we communicate to the monkey. And we do this over and over again. So for instance, and so you see there are going to be, so for example, you can summarize this trial with the number 4 and 1. Because the monkey was offered 4 of peppermint and 1 of grape, 1 unit of grape, okay? So it would be 4 of B and 1 of A in this notation. So you see this 4 and 1? That's that. So 2 and 1, you have 2 blue square and 1 yellow square. And we have all these possible combinations. Okay, there's a question coming for you. So these are all the possible menus that we offer. So as I said, the monkey prefers A to B, but depends on the quantity. Okay, so if B, which is peppermint, is offered in a lot, then we will go for the B option. That's okay? So you can normalize the utility of a monkey, you will see is approximately follows this law. 1 unit of A is equivalent to 4 of B. Good. So that's the experiment. You can do this with humans, and you can then elicit the utility function of the human. For monkeys, we can do something else. So if you elicit the utility function of the choices of the human or the monkey, you have the black data, which are the frequency of the B choice. So let's look here. You see B is increasing and A is decreasing. So you can expect that as you go from left to right, the proportion of the B choice will go up. Is that clear? So here, you forget the 2 extremes. These are for normalization. Just look at this and this. We go from 1 of B against 2 of A. Of course, you will go for A, so the probability of B is 0. And then here we go from to 10 of B and 1 of A. So it will, of course, now it's too much. The peppermint is not as tasty, but it's really a lot, so it will go for peppermint. So that's what we have. You see, it's a nice logistic. You can do the logistic and get this coefficient. That's the behavioral part. But we can also stick an electrode in the brain, approximately here, of the monkey, and get in different regions the firing rate of the neuron that you are exploring. So I remind you, a neuron is something that fires at approximately a Poisson process with the firing rate that we will study the firing rate. Think of the firing rate as the utility. And so you have information about the firing rate of the neuron that you are exploring. That firing rate is presented in red. Is this slide clear? These are the subjects. This is the experiment. These are the data. That's what we have. Our task is to understand how choices are taken. First part. Second part is understanding what sense not the choice is optimal, but the process is optimal. These are our two tasks, and we are going to do it from this data. Are you following me? It's important. Okay. That's what we do. Okay. Yep.
So in the graph that you showed, the black and the red graph, firing rate must correspond to utility. Why is that? I mean, if I gain disutility, a strong reaction of any kind might perhaps correspond to a high firing rate?
Yes, so very good. All of these are very good questions. The why it's a fire. So you're asking two questions, right? One is why this utility identified with the Poisson firing rate, and you will see that. The other question is how do I model losses here? Okay, so it's a complicated and different issue. I will not touch that. It's located in a different region. So let's say that we are only dealing here with gains. Okay? Sure, very good. Okay. So I said you get this evidence from a neuron. You pick it at random in the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. And you get lots of data. You get a lot of data. These monkeys, they have to drink, so every day they go there and they do this, and you get a lot of data. Okay, now you have, I'll begin asking your question. I will show you a pattern. I will show you a standard model, and you will have to be able to guess what goes with what. I will be more clear in a moment, but at some point you have to have a flash of insight. Okay? So here is the situation. If by data mining, that's how I found the situation. By data mining, you find that there are, well, you have 4, but it's a hint. Actually, there are only 3 types of neuron. A type of neuron is a specific association between the behavioral data and the firing rates. So let's examine how they look. One is like this. So, you know, if I give you this picture, okay, there is not much going on in the behavioral data. The behavioral data are always that as you increase the number of B's, eventually you choose B. Okay, all the action is in the neural data. Okay, so ignore the 2 extremes in which one of the 2 goods is not even offered. So of course you go for the one that is offered. Between nothing and something, you go for something. That is there for normalization, okay? What do you see striking about this picture? Three is very high, 2 is low, 1 is even lower. It stays 1, stays approximately the same. So this seems, I'm trying to lead you, I mean, I would like to tickle your curiosity and see how can I derive from this data a model of choice? how about this? B here is constant, then it starts going up and goes up at B at 10. So this is, it was called by just empirical analysis, offer value of A, in the sense it seems to code the quantity of A. And this seems to code the quantity of B. So let me clarify. I mean, every time you pick a record from a neuron, and that neuron will behave more or less in one of these 4 ways. Okay, and then you categorize a neuron as a neuron that is coding the value of A. Here is a neuron that is value or quantity of A. Here is a value coding the quantity of B. How about this? So the only information you have here is this pattern of the firing rate. What do you think is that coding? Okay, is coding. If you have to bring in the black data, because this, if you bring in, so you realize that here you're choosing B, here you're choosing A, here A is large, here B is large. So this is coding the value of the option that you choose. You are losing me. Don't lose me. It's interesting. Yes.
Yeah, so I'm losing you a bit.
Excuse me?
I'm losing you a bit. What's the difference between the different graphs? I missed that. Offer value A, offer value B, chosen value.
Can I say that this is proportional to the number of, ignore this. I'm claiming this. You can explain the red by looking at these quantities and only at these quantities.
But the axes seem the same across the graphs, right? Even for offer value B. What's changing between those 2 graphs? Is it just how much you value A versus B?
Oh, the neuron is changing.
Ah, okay.
There is a part of the brain here. You pick a neuron here, and it will always behave like this. Is that okay? Please ask me a question. I don't want to lose that.
Then
There is a different neuron. So there is a neuron here, which is the A neuron.
Ah, okay.
There is another neuron here, which is the B neuron. Then there is another neuron here, which is the chosen value.
Okay.
And then there is another neuron here, which is the Soggen juice. 4 types of neurons. Is that okay? That's a regularity that we have. The problem is going to make out of this a model. Those are the models I like, are the models that tell me something about reality.
Why do those names correspond to the neurons? Why did you name them this way? That's what I'm not.
So I didn't choose these names. They are sort of supposed to give an idea of what they're doing. Okay. So they're a little bit suggestive. These are neurons that code how much A's, how much B, how much the option you choose. And okay. And the last one is firing when you choose B and is not firing at all when you choose A. Do you agree? And there is, of course, a chosen juice A, which is going to be like this.
Just clarification. There are a couple of red dot points. They are extreme red dot points.
These two.
Yeah, are not
Yes.
connected to the line. Why? I mean, I'm trying to
So
understand.
you should ignore, but because the behavior is completely different. You just go for they are there because we need them to provide a reference. But if you're referring to this, and this, there is nothing interesting to be gained from that, because you're not comparing two quantities. You're just going for the only option that is giving you something. Is that okay? Yes.
So I understood that one part is just express of excitement. What is the problem because of that?
Yeah, so as I said, this is how I found the data analysis. There was a widespread consensus that neurons fall into one of these 4 or 5 classes. And now you have to make sense of it. And in fact, I would like to challenge you to make sense of it. Okay? So please take this as given. I mean, it's a regularity. You pick a neuron out of this ventromedial prefrontal cortex, it's going to be either this type or this type or this type or this type. Why? We don't know for the moment.
I'm just trying to understand it. So can we say that our choices are actually the mappings of neuron?
Just
So these are the choices. These are what I choose out of 2 options, right? So
Yeah.
can we say that these are our choices reflected the mapping of neurons? So
no, this is just an empirical classification for the moment. Understanding what function they have in the choice process, you will tell me. After I show you one more slide. Is that okay? So that's what people knew around 10 years ago. That okay? Neurons fall into one of these 4 categories. Why? No idea. Okay? Next piece of information for you is this. So from visual perception, there was a wide, let me explain this. From visual perception, there was a wide consensus that choice in visual perception is organized in a network of neurons that has this shape. Let me explain. Visual perception is this. I show you random dots on a screen. And these random dots appear and disappear. But if you start looking at them, it looks like they're moving in one direction. You know, if you put a dot here, then it disappears and appears right to just to the right, it will look like it's moving right. So the classical experiment is this. I show you dots and they have a very small tendency to move either to the right or to the left. And you have to decide whether they're moving to the right or to the left. That's the task they have. And so this is right. This is evidence for left. This is evidence for right. Let me explain this diagram. An arrow means excitatory impulses. So neurons in this cluster excite neurons in this cluster, proportionally to the input that they have received. Neurons in this network, this subnetwork, activate proportional to the inputs they receive and activate these downstream neurons. Ignore this part for the moment, but it will never happen. Then these neurons activate a common pool, which are called interneurons. So look, there is a blue arrow here and a blue arrow here. They are both activating this group. Okay. Then these neurons have, in return, act on these in a inhibitory fashion. So the stronger this is, the weaker the activation of this neuron is. Okay? So that's the scheme. Is it clear? An arrow means that, so then there are a lot of subsidiary arrows, but I told you the essential ones. Oh, this one. So some of them are really not important. They are variations of the model. So this, that they can act on each other. This is random noise, okay? And then there is an So that's the way. Okay, so if you ignore this, you have 5 clusters of neurons. Okay? Question for you. What is the map between this and this? Excuse me? Sure. Here you have groups of neurons. Oh. Here you also have group of neurons. I'm claiming there is a map that associates each of these to each of these. I don't know, could be, these ones are these ones. I don't know. But it's a map that once you see it, you say, oh, of course, how stupid I was not to see that. Yes, but I mean, what is, so is this, which one of this? This one. Good. B, this. What are these? Which of these 5? No, wait, this is a link. It's not a cluster of neurons. He's saying that this is this. Because once you understand this, then you write down a model. It's a simple mathematical model. Again, it's a stochastic process. You can check it with the data and you see, does it reproduce the data? So let me, maybe this is what is going on. I'm suggesting to provide an intuition. Let's say this is worth 5 and this is worth 1. Okay? Choice is the simple task of choosing 5 instead of 1. What a stupid task. In fact, economists so far correctly thought this is a very stupid task. If I give you 5 and 1, you choose 5. But you have to do this operation of choosing the maximum using a neural network. Okay, so you have to implement a maximization function using the neural network. That's how you do it. So these are firing at firing rate corresponding to 5. These are firing corresponding to 1. They are giving here an impulse of 5. They are giving an impulse of 1. Agreed so far? These arrows give 5 here and 1 here. These think of, they make the average. 5 plus 1 divided by 2, 3. Okay? They give backward 3. But now 3 is inhibitory. So this gets 3, this also gets 3. Okay? Now you have 5 coming in and minus 3 coming in. You have 1 coming up, minus 3 coming. So you get a minus 2 here, and what did I say? 5 minus 3, 2. So this will keep So this on net gives +2, this on net gives -2. This will converge to maximum activation. This will die off. That is how you choose. So, look, I'm simply saying that is how you implement this very simple choice. Is that clear? You think this is stupid? That's how you know, how do we know that if I drop a stone is attracted to the earth at the speed of blah blah? You formulate a conjecture and you test whether it fits the data. No? How do you know that? Is it different? I'll continue. I'll press my. That's a conjecture. But anyway, you have to agree that it fits. This very well. You're not happy. Look, nature is producing animals, have to choose between 5 and 1, most of the time have to choose 5. It's a matter of survival. And they have to do it in some way. They do it this way. Yes.
Sorry. So even when the nature, I'm sitting in the, it's just a choice sitting in somewhere in a forest and so on, there are costs, there are trade-offs. So why is it that there is no trade-off in your model between choosing between 5 and 1? So there has to be some cost of collecting. So it's not as if 5 and 1 are presented to me simultaneously. There has to be some kind of implicit cost or price. So why is it that the brain is not taking that into account in your schema of things? So for example, suppose I'm collecting 5 fruits vis-a-vis, 5 grapes vis-a-vis 1 peppermint or whatever.
You are really facing this, right? Someone offered 4 peppermints and 1 grape.
Yes, but
which one do you choose?
No, the point is that this choice cannot be just, you're offering me in platter in real life when I'm making that choice in my neural framework. There is an effort cost. Maybe I have to go and collect the peppermint and it might be more costly than. So there is a cost aspect, which it seems to me that your model doesn't take into account. Or is it the case that I'm missing something here?
The cost of making the computation is there, in the sense you could choose randomly, and that is dominate. So, of course, you have to have a realistic model how much it costs. At the order of magnitude of the model that we have, it's really better doing this than choosing randomly. You are getting ahead of me, yes. Because now I have given you a verbal description. Now I have to write a model. Is that okay? So I write a model that says this is the activation of your inclination to choose good eye. And as even deeper foundation, I will get that to the moment, which has a deterministic term which is going down, depending proportionally to the activation that you have. And then you have the 1 minus s, again, that is how much you increase times a term that is depending on the input that you receive, the inhibition that you get from the other, and the positive self-excitatory that you get on your own. I'm just saying this is a very quick way of modeling this process. Now we have a model, and we can predict at the same time on the basis of this model both behavioral data and neural data. And I will propose to my friend there, that is, if the fit is good, I think I will have a good explanation, just as when I write Newtonian mechanics, I have a good explanation of what happens when a body falls. No?
Yes, but you started with that the as if story is not good enough, right? Your starting point is that as if story is not good enough. We need the deterministic mechanics, which you know for sure. And but what you have done is gone one layer more, but you are still presenting. No, we don't. If you go back to the previous slide, this average thing, and then that we don't observe, right? That's still as if.
Are you serious?
But is it?
Let me put it this way. It's a mile closer to the actual process. It's the first time I see an explanation of independent neural and behavioral with a net that is similar to what you have in visual perception. And by the way, this is providing a unifying view of how we make choices. You're not happy. Now I'll show you how it fits the data. Of course, it fits the data perfectly. I wouldn't be here, right? So, okay, so you do this. Oh, this is to show economic theory, economic choices are much harder because the right and left is one-dimensional. Economic choices are much harder. So it gives you a much more severe test on the discipline, because I'm just saying a particle, if it doesn't move right, if the only choice is moving right or left, you have really a one-dimensional fact to analyze. Here you have how much is, which one is bigger by how much. So these are the experimental data. These are the neural data. You map them, they correspond very well. Okay. And for each group of neurons, so you have a perfect correspondence between, after you change, in each of these, you have what probability you choose, the pattern of activation of different neurons, even the pattern over time. We match the pattern over time. I'm just saying this. This is a stochastic differential equation, so it will give you a pattern over time. We match that too. Is that okay? Pretty good, come on. Okay, so the random noise, I want to get back to that. The random noise is the fact that, okay, so so the random noise is coming from this fact. Here, there is a finite number of neurons. It's very large, but it's finite. And here is another finite. So each one is activating the neuron. So you are looking at a bunch of Poisson processes that are going on at the same time. So that's the stochastic process, okay? Then you approximate using mean field, and you get this. So, okay, but you have to remember that you are really looking at a bunch of Poisson processes. This will become important in the next step.
So we have considered a case between two choices. So what if the choice set is large enough? So then how do the mind processes that information?
I mean, if you have three options?
No, maybe infinite options. Let us say the choice set is large enough.
Yeah, then, okay, then you run several processes at the same time. Camillo has done that. I lost interest because I think at this point, what is going on is clear. You make a race. Here you are making a race to see who gets at a critical threshold first among two. Now you make a race among three. Okay, three. It's fun. I mean, it's important. I mean, maybe it gives you an idea, but I mean, it's a simple. Once you really understand this, this is the way to implement this with networks that act this way. And so the key of this network is to create a common threshold, which is the 3. And this is going to be above this threshold. This is going to be below this threshold. The activation of this will go to 1. The activation of this will go to 0. That's how nature implements choosing between 5 and 1. Could nature be doing better? I don't know. That's how we do it. How you implement. You don't find this fascinating. I think that's how a utility is computed. Okay. Okay, so we have a model. Now I would like to show you that it can help explaining something which economists know as a reference-dependent choice. Okay, on dependence on the environment. So here, now I have a model. I want to prove theorems like this. We have a cardinal utility because neurons communicate in an adaptive way. We have adaptive coding because the spice process is Poisson. Let me explain. I hope I'm not losing you. I think I can. So here is the evidence. Let me explain this evidence. Again, this was evidence that was not explained. What we mean as economists. What you mean as economist. So it's not just ordinal, is how much you are coding. So the firing rate is really a measure of the cardinal utility. So we have the firing rate of the offer value neurons is one of these 5 types, you remember? Yeah. But they all have this feature, which is adaptive coding. Adaptive coding is this. These blue lines correspond to an experimental environment. You are offered between 0 and 2. So the minimum is 0, the maximum is 2 quantities of that good. The firing rate of that neuron has this form. Is it clear? So you have different quantities offered. You can trace what was the firing rate of that neuron. The red corresponding to this, it's another experimental environment in which you are offered between the minimum is 0, the maximum is 10. That's how the data look like. If you take averages, they look like this. Do you see any pattern? You know, it's not clean, but you see it and you say, oh yeah. Do you see any pattern? So the pattern is this. The maximum firing rate is always normalized. It's always 9. The minimum is 0. You adjust so that over the range given to you by the environment, the firing rate covers this entire span. That is what is called adaptive coding. The firing rate of the neuron adjusts so that the dynamic range, which is the difference between the minimum and the maximum firing rate, is always 9. Of course, if you offer between 0 and 2, you get 0 at 0 and 9 at 2. If you offer between 0 and 10, you have a firing rate of 0 at 0 and of 9 at 10. Why? You don't understand my question. Why? I am an engineer. I come to you and I say, please design for me a choice mechanism that does something. For instance, it maximizes my expected value. Why should I choose to do this? Is my question clear? No? Thanks for the honesty. So I described for you a choice mechanism in the previous model. And now I'm taking the firing rate as something that you can control depending on which environment you are in. Okay, it's a possible question that and the answer could be, well, I don't really care about the environment in which I'm in. I will always code in the same way. That's a possibility, right? So at a quantity of grapes of 2 milliliters, I will always fire at the same rate, independently of whether 2 milliliters of grape is in an environment in which we vary from 0 to 10, or in an environment in which we vary from 0 to 2. Yes, these are possibilities. No, are possible. Okay, let me put it in a framework which is more familiar. Your response to the light stimulus is independent of the light intensity in the room in which you are. Do you consider this a plausible conjecture? No, you adjust. Yes, I'm claiming that that's what we do. So I'm appealing to your personal experience to realize that the response to a luminosity of an object depends on how bright the room in which you are in is. Where is the? No, so 9 is really firing, and neurons can fire at the maximum firing rate. Because as she said, there is a cost. The cost increases when the firing rate increases. The more you fire, the more energy you consume. Also, there is a physiological limit. You can't fire more than this much, okay? So I'm trying to, I'm first investigating the following question. When we evaluate, the monkeys evaluate rewards, do they behave in the same way as in which we do when you are put in a bright or in a dim room? And the answer seems to be yes, in this way. So the common feature I think I found is that you change the slope of the firing rate so that over the environment, you always go from the minimum to the maximum. You exploit the full dynamic range. Is that so? You could say, I will always use the yellow line. Say, so that means that when you have 2, you always have 2 of firing rate, independently of whether 2 is extremely good in that environment or extremely poor. Instead, here you find that for an offer of 2, if you are in an environment in which 2 is pretty bad because it's 2 compared to a maximum 1, the firing rate is small. Instead, in the environment in which the range is between 0 and 2, you fire at the maximum. That's a regularity that has been, that data tell us. The question is why? I want to find by mathematical insight a key property of the process I'm studying that makes this choice of rescaling with respect to the distribution of rewards in an environment optimal. No, do you know stochastic processes?
So is it just
You should see why we do this. I'll tell you.
to maximize the probability that you're making the right decision?
Yes, so what we really, no, that's the criterion, right? But so here is my question. I give you the network that I described to you. This network, going back to his question, is stochastic because it's a combination of Poisson processes. It has this property. And my conjecture is optimal for that process. And I'm going to show you why. No, it's a very elementary property of Poisson processes that I will remind you. Thank you for your patience for so far. Yes?
It is a matter of scaling. Like I'm getting the maximum I can from the situation, then my neurons will spike to the maximum level.
Yeah, you see, but you don't know which one is the maximum. So the only thing they are asking you to
It
choose
is not
between
the
right
prior
and left.
knowledge.
They are asking you to, just 1 second, they are asking you to choose between right and left. You don't know where the maximum is. The structure of the choice process is given to you by millions of years of evolution. In these millions of years of evolution, you have understood, selection process understood, that you'd better adjust to the structure of the rewards in the environment. And given that the overall process is constructed by by a network of Poisson processes, it has to come out that doing this rescaling is optimal. It's a magic thing. It's a magic, only works for Poisson processes. Let me continue. Okay, there is no, it's not only this. I mean, a bunch of people found the same thing, changing the standard distribution. It's really a well-established fact that we normalize, just as we normalize in visual perception. Okay, someone did blah blah. Let me go straight. Okay, this is the real model that we use, okay? But maybe I can back to it. I just want to go to the key idea. So what is a Poisson? Oh, I have to remind you, I have to inform you that the numbers you were seeing, 0 and 9, were after normalizing because we subtract a neuron always fire. No reason to fire, always fire, at least 5, 6 hertz, okay, spikes per second. So the real, in the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, the average firing rate is about 16 hertz, 16 spikes. So how does a Poisson process look at 16? Well, you do the computation, look, is this. Has a mean of 15 by the well-known property of the Poisson process. And at that point, it's really a normal distribution. So a Poisson process is really a normal distribution, but has this crucial property. If you know anything about Poisson processes, that's the processes that characterize them. They have mean equal to variance. I'm losing you. Okay. So I'll try to explain to you in a simple example, then I'll be done because I understand this is becoming technical, but just to give you a taste of what it means, if you really mean it, to understand what choice is. So you have a process now of which you can adjust the mean, but you know that when you adjust the mean, you also are adjusting the variance. So let me now propose to you a very simple problem. You can solve it. A graduate student in statistics can solve it in a minute. Let's try to explain this way. I offer you two quantities, x and y. They have a joint symmetric distribution that is unknown. You don't observe x and y, but you observe a signal on it. The signal is normal. So the signal for x and for y is normal, but has the mean and the standard deviation proportional to the real number, so is x. And then an s, which is the slope of the firing rate that you can control. And the same for the y. So you are an engineer, and I'm going to ask you, how do I choose the s? The structure of the model tells you that you will not observe X or Y, but the difference between the two. So by choosing the maximum really means that you have to choose the largest of the two signals. The problem that you're facing is to choose the largest expected payoff. And your variable, the choice variable is the S, the slope. I'm almost done. Then I'll let you in peace. Okay, that's the problem. How do I choose the S? Now, I exploited the property that the Poisson process is really normal when the number of spikes is about 10 or above. The only crucial thing of the Poisson process is that the mean and the variance move at the same time. It's important because you are increasing the mean or also increasing the variance. So the signal that you observe is distributed as normal with this property. That is the difference of the mean and then the standard deviation, the variance is additive because the two processes are independent. Okay, guys, you make a computation and you want to maximize, what you want to do is maximize the choice of X when X is larger and the choice of Y when Y is larger. You reduce it to this process. You want to choose to make this quantity as large as possible. This is just algebraic rearrangement from this. Using the property that I explained, reminded to you of the Poisson processes, you get that this is the standard normal, mean 0, standard deviation 1. The probability of making the right choice is this probability. You can choose the S. How do you choose the S? As large as possible. So the miracle here is that let me summarize this, since the process is Poisson and the ratio between the variances is identical, so when you look at the standard deviation, you get an additional S here, and you want to make the S as large as possible. Hence, the payoff increases with S, and the optimal policy is to choose S as large as possible, which is what this is. I'm sure I lost everybody, but I proved to you that if you are an engineering and you can choose how to adjust to an environment, you do it this way. So that's the real reason why we have reference-dependent choices. We need to adjust our choice process to the properties of the environment. Sorry, I imposed this on you, but I think it's a great insight. Yes.
So I'm trying to gel this with an intuition from another paper that tries to explain reference-dependent preferences by Gary Becker and Luis Rayo.
My goodness, they didn't know anything about this stuff. Okay.
Yeah, so they have a
okay, so here is an as-if model. Why should I care? Yeah. I don't remember it. What do they do? I mean, my goodness, Gary Becker is a giant of our profession. But
so they do the following. They say, look, there's an agent picking between different choices, and nature, evolution is a mech designer who's trying to assign utilities for those choices. Evolution wants to make the agents do the thing that maximizes fitness.
Perfect. So far, we are in perfect agreement.
You're in agreement.
Good.
And then they
say the constraints.
The constraints are that things that are nearby in happiness, agents have difficulty distinguishing. And so they make
the agent has
difficulty distinguishing. So if two actions give me similar levels of happiness, then I randomly choose because I can't distinguish. And then there's a maximal level of happiness that I can get because my brain can only give me so much happiness, and a minimal level of unhappiness that I can get. And so now this becomes like a mechanism design problem, but nature has to decide where to put the slope, sort of make the jump from being very unhappy to very happy. And then they get this sort of reference dependence that, I think as you change the environment, you want to use.
So the part I don't understand is this works only if the process is Poisson, because that's the only process in which if you change the mean, you also change the variance in the same way. So this theory only works for Poisson processes, and neurons are some processes. That's the magic of it. So I guarantee to you that if you let me choose the stochastic process that is determining choice in Becker et al. Model, I can get anything I want.
Okay.
So I will do this, but you understand and you agree with me.
Yeah, yep.
That is crucial. That it's almost normal, but is S times X mean S times X variance? That's crucial. Because then when you take the standard deviation, you get the square root of S, and then when you divide, you get the square root S in top.
So I guess maybe a more fruitful way of posing this is to separate straights or differently.
So Gary Becker is always impressive. I think he lacked this piece of information that real is not any stochastic. I can make a stochastic process which is Brownian motion, which is what I skipped it. But the previous theory, okay, here. They use this model and they do mean field theory, they reduce to a deterministic process, and they add their own Ornstein-Uhlenbeck process with a parameter here that is chosen by the theorist. And it doesn't work. And so you have to remember that the stochastic process that you have from start, it's a bunch of Poisson processes, and they carry over this important property. So this looks like, this is Gary Becker's model, from what I understand from you, where I have complete freedom of making, you see this S square is the parameter? It's an average parameter. It doesn't depend on the environment. But of course, we know that it does depend on the environment because of all this evidence. This is evidence. Are you with me?
Yep,
Good.
I'm with you.
Okay, so we explained this. I'll stop here. Look, I don't want to torture people. I could keep going on like this. You can explain a lot of stuff, but addressed to you, hey, addressed to you, come on, seems that you're getting something. No, don't you think? I don't know. Okay. Okay. Questions? I scared everybody? Yeah, I confused everybody.
So I guess this is more philosophy and stepping outside of your model, but
philosophy is good.
But so you were saying you want to change from optimal choices to optimal process.
Yep.
So why? As I was wondering if you thought about why do constraints look this way? Why did we evolve to have that kind of network, kind of mechanism? Like, what's optimal about it?
So optimal, no, wait a minute. What's optimal is that maximizes, if you look at the expected value, you maximize by choosing S as large as possible. So if I tell you, choose the S as large as possible, the only constraint you have is that at the maximum of the range, you don't go above 9, which is the 16.
Yep.
That's the constraint. Then there is the whole rest of constraint, which is animals are a bunch of neurons, but in the brain, and the neurons are Poisson process. That's, that's you're asking me why God or evolution drew that. I think that is given. And because it's a very simple, after all, it's a very simple and remarkable mechanism of choice. You have a bunch of stuff that don't know anything, and the only thing they can do is fire and not fire. Out of that, we built a model that predicts how you choose and why adaptive coding has that property. Why are we in the brain, a bunch of neurons that fire Poisson? I don't know. It's an interesting question. Could we have But it's a very simple process. Yes. And then. What is S? The slope of this line. Yes, so this is the problem. Make S as large as possible under the constraint that at the maximum input, you don't go above 9. Let's say that if you go, it's not really, you can go above, but as she was saying, when you go, the cost is non-linear. When you increase the firing rate above a certain threshold, either it's impossible or it's very costly. So you can summarize this as saying, if I put you in an environment in which the reward go between 0 and 10, you have to choose the slope of this line so that the corresponding firing rate stays between 0 and 9. So if you solve the following problem, maximize S subject to S of S times the maximum less or equal than 9, you get that. Is that clear? I can make it as simple than this.
I have a question. So, oh, you want
no,
okay,
but
yeah. So, okay, I am doing it first then. Yeah. So, yeah, you won't like this question because actually, I teach behavioral economics here, and you said you don't like behavioral economists, but
where is behavioral economics here?
But that's why this won't be very comfortable to you. But yeah, but as a whole, philosophically, behavioral economists, for instance, famous ones like Matt Rabin, etc., they want to make portable extensions of existing models, where the canonical models are special cases of their revised models. So are the canonical models here also special cases of your way of modeling things? That will make it just a bit more elegant, actually. That's
So the substantial difference between behavioral economics and this is that behavioral economics has no discipline. I can make things up as he was suggesting. Brilliant. But I mean, I have constraints here. So within those constraints, I find a reasonable reason why you should, again, really, we cannot expect, it's a very stupid point. We cannot expect that selection selects the decision process of a monkey so that the monkey maximizes utility in the experiment designed by Camillo Padoa-Schioppa in his 2006 paper. We can't have a theory like this. This is stupid. We have a theory that has to work for general environments. And a general environment is you have this machine, which is made of neurons, and you have a reward environment. And you basically have to adjust to properties of the reward so that typically you maximize expected utility. The other thing that is different from behavioral economics is the following. Once I have this process, I can describe for you how long it takes. That's the second part of the slides that I'm going to skip. How long it takes when I change the environment. So you see here I can do this to you, Monty. I can put you in this environment. So you respond to 4 with this. Now, let's say I put you in this environment, okay? And you respond to 4 with the firing rate about 7. Now I change you to this environment. In this environment, the same option 4 looks like it's worth much less, because now the firing rate has gone down to 3. So if the other good has the same distribution, now this good is in the red is going to be chosen much less. Because it's like I'm making you choose one object in normal light and the other object I put you in a dim room. So now the impulse is weaker. So you tend to choose this good less. That's a bias. That's really a reference-dependent bias if you want to explain it like this. The big difference from what that theory, behavioral theory, and this model is that now I can tell you, thanks to the stochastic process I described, how long it takes to go back to adjusting in the real way. And so I can tell you how long it takes to go back to a correct assessment. And the analysis, the experimental data, and the analysis tells you it doesn't take much. So there are biases, like there are biases when you go from a brightly lit room into a dimly lit room, but they go away very quickly. So in this sense, I'm really not a behavioral economist.
So you can convert the psychology and economics question.
I think I'm an economist that knows how things work.
I see some intuitive connection between what you're saying and there is a model called zero intelligence agents. Are you on? Yeah. Yeah. So I see some intuitive connection between what you're talking about when you are suggesting that we should move away from counterfactual models as if like the more mechanistic ways. Once you start incorporating the rules of the game or constraints that you are facing, then the choice set does not matter. Like what you choose does not matter. As if like you don't have intelligence and you are choosing randomly.
I like these guys, but I never agree with them.
No, because
You guys, we can, so let's be serious. We cannot, as theorists, give ourselves a complete freedom of choosing the model. We can't, we just can't. We are not serious.
No, but
You understand what I'm saying? I mean, give me a month and give me a problem, I'll find the optimal solution. Okay, it has to be correct. So maybe it's similar.
Because like
I'm just expressing to you a
I'm
deep
taking
philosophical.
that is coming from neuroscience about illusion, free will being an illusion, very seriously. That and that has some severe implication for the way we are thinking about the world.
I don't know. Do you think a monkey has free will? Oh, and we are special.
No, we don't.
Ah, okay.
We just rationalize our decision making as if we are making choices.
Then we are in agreement. You and I am.
Let's say there are corrections from the backside. Let's check.
Can I interpret this sort of environment thing with something which in real life can constrain some people that they're sticking to social conditioning tells them that they can be only on the, let's say, the purple line, cannot move to the red line. So can I combine your theory of biological choice with society's constraints to say that some of them are not allowed to move to the other lines?
Yeah, so I mean, I think this applies to, this can be used to the analysis of, you can design an experiment in which there is a famous savage in his book talks about, I make you choose whether to put a radio in the car. At the time they were putting a radios in cars. And I can either ask you to put the radio or not when you are buying the car. And so the amount of money that you are thinking on is very large because it's the cost of money. And then you say, well, okay, yes, let's say $100. I'm making this up because radios are not in cars anymore. But if I ask you, do you want a car? Well, they're not, you don't buy accessory cars. So if you buy a car of $30,000 and $100 seems so small in this that you say yes. But if you buy the car and then I come to you and I say, do you want to put the radio in the car? And you say, hey, wait a minute, $100 is a lot. And so you decide not to do. I think these are echoes of these basic echoes in the sense that there is something like that in our processing that mimics the properties of this choice the properties of this choice process. But yeah, so yes, you can, but we have to be very careful. And again, you have to tell me, you have to give me a reasonable estimate how long it takes before this effect vanishes. In my opinion, it's always very fast.
After the session. Okay with that? So in that case, let me ask a couple of simple questions. So in this process, are the choices binary that you look
Oh
at
yeah,
the
in this
objects,
so in this very simple model, yeah, this is binary.
and is there
you can extend it. So I'm not saying it's trivial.
You know, so what is the process at work that, you know, the choices are essentially binary, but then there's a transitivity at work if there are more than two objects to choose from?
Yes, so the extension is not completely trivial, but really there are no surprises. You have a competing process among rather than two competitors, 5 competitors,
Makes
and
sense.
the process
Just
is
wanted
really
to
similar.
be clear for my
Yeah,
understanding.
yes, so it would look the same.
And is there a scope for indecisiveness here, for incompleteness of a choice?
Indecisive. Okay, randomness is there. So
what
wait a
God
minute.
is
Randomness is
saying.
there. So when I offer 3B and 1A here, that's the frequency. So you don't choose always B or always A. Choose here, you choose it with, I don't know, 80% probability. So that's an explanation of stochastic choice. So this model explains, among other things, stochastic choice, which
that
is...
could be indifference getting reflected as stochastic choice and not indecisiveness.
Yeah. So if indecisiveness is... a measure of undecisiveness is how much time it takes you to decide. Would you like this measure? So, you offer me 2 choices, and if they are like this, so you're almost indifferent, you will see that the time to choose becomes larger. That's a well-established property of choice processes. That is the one that the model that you were mentioning has. So contrary to economic intuition, when you have 2 things that are almost the same, economic intuition would make us think, well, okay, you'll choose whatever because they are indifferent. But the opposite is true, which it was one of the things that struck me as economic intuition is basically flawed because it doesn't recognize that when you have 2 options that are similar in value, the choice is harder. For an economist, look, of course it's easier. You care. I mean, instead it's harder because it's a choice process. So a measure of indecisiveness in the models is closer to 50% choice, closer to indifference, the time to decide goes up.
And final question from my side is, so how do you explain heterogeneity in choices by different individuals under similar circumstances? Is that they perceive the environment differently in your model? How will you explain that?
Yeah, so well, the interesting issue is so the mechanism here is always the same among individuals, okay? So the question that you may ask is, I have a few papers on this, which is really the correlation among characteristics of an individual. So let me say something which is well known is the fact that if I ask you to make a choice between 2 intertemporal payments, okay, so how patient you are, so whether you want $10 today or 15 in a month, and I can compute your discount factor. So now you have a measure of patience. Take another measure which looks completely independent, which is your intelligence. intelligence? Is there a relationship between the two? Between your patience and your intelligence? The answer is yes. And intelligent people are more patient. This is a well-known fact in psychology. It goes back to an experiment of choice among marshmallow. Have you ever heard of this thing? You do an experiment, you put a kid in front, you put marshmallow on the table, and you say, don't eat it, and you go away, and you see how many actually eat the marshmallow. And then you correlate with intelligence and the future economic success, and two things are correlated. The less patient you are, the less likely you are to be intelligent, and the less successful you are in life. Fascinating topic, still under investigation.
Thank you, Professor Rustichini, for delivering yet another fascinating talk. Please join me in giving him big hands.
Thank you.
Now to the organizers, if you want to make some announcements. So this session is over. I will give the floor to organizers to make logistic if they have to make any announcements.